Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, consumers are increasingly longing for a personal, local touch in the goods that they buy, rather than them soulless behemoths that we see out there in clone towns across the world. And there are people that are reevaluating their work, and many are dreaming of quitting their 9-to-5 jobs to sell handmade crafts, or at least start a lucrative side hustle. And as a result, one of the things I've noticed is the craft industry is booming right now. But what I'm curious about is the technology that has made all that possible. And for example, I think in 2019 alone, more than 2.5 million sellers sold goods through the Etsy platform. And with the resurgence of the handmade movement, craft fairs cropped up everywhere for makers to get their goods out to the world. But then, of course, we all know what happened next. The pandemic hit and craft fairs have all but disappeared. But I recently discovered a company called Issuu that is enabling communities around the world to create beautiful lookbooks and bring their products to life and simulate that sense of community that you would get from a traditional craft fair. And I was curious how they're using technology to help replace craft fairs and other in-person showcasing and selling opportunities with lively interactive online flip books with videos and rich imagery and other media to bring their crafts to life and ultimately keep sales coming. But that is only a small part of what Issuu is doing and how they're helping small businesses. So I also wanted to learn more about how Issuu was leveraging technology and removing problems for businesses of all sizes. And as a solopreneur that creates a wealth of content, and let's look at this daily tech podcast, breaking that up into separate pieces of content to share across a myriad of platforms. It's just too time consuming. So I'm especially curious how they can make it possible to create something once and then distribute it everywhere by taking things like PDFs, images and text and transforming them using their templates to give a native experience on desktop, mobile, web, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and all of social media. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to California, where Joe Hyrkin, CEO of Issuu, is waiting to speak with us now. Big warm welcome to the show. Can you just tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hello, I am Joe Hyrkin. I'm the CEO of Issuu. And Issuu is a massive digital publishing platform where we enable marketers and businesses to be able to make their marketing content, brochures, catalogs, all their content that is designed to tell a story to their audience. We enable them to make that digitally available in a range of different assets and formats to be distributed to all the different channels where that content needs to go. And we cater to millions of businesses and marketers globally who are leveraging our tools and services to make their digital experiences and their digital creation and distribution much more efficient.
It's incredibly cool what you're doing there. But I'd love to take you back in time just a little while and ask, what was it that inspired you to join Issuu and the kind of problems that you set out to solve with them?
I joined Issuu about 8 years ago, actually. It's the longest job I've ever had. And I was inspired by a couple of key points. The first is Issuu really sits at this intersection of creativity, technology, and innovation and distribution. And I've always felt throughout my whole career that when a business can tap into providing capabilities, tools, services for people to pursue their passion and to build their businesses around, then you've got a really strong opportunity. If we can be in a role where we're facilitating and enabling and empowering folks to do what matters most to them, then you have a strong opportunity and likely longevity and sustainability. So that was one. The second is Issuu now is a huge scale business. We serve 4 or 5 million creators and marketers. Back then, we were still quite big, but I could sort of see that it was this combination of the tools and services and facilitating people's own manifestations of their creativity and their business communications, as well as something that had a huge market and a huge need. There's in a way, there's this evergreen capability to what we do. Businesses are constantly being formed. They're constantly having to create new pieces of content and new ways to communicate. And there are always new channels for them to distribute that content to. So the platform itself was very exciting. The other component of what we do is increasingly in this world, it's extremely complicated to get the right set of assets and the right pieces of information distributed to the right places. And so we like to say at Issuu, we enable you to create once and share everywhere. And that's exciting to me too, because we're enabling businesses to be more efficient. We're enabling people when they're creating their marketing materials, when they're running their companies, to focus on what they do best, which is to create their products and to have good relationships with their customers, and then we facilitate the distribution and that engagement.
And for anybody listening outside of the industry, that statement that you just gave there is huge, because the problem of create once, publish anywhere has been a while it's been around for so long now, but really exploded as of late with all the different devices and channels. It eats up so much time, and especially of busy teams now. So because Issuu solves that, can you tell me how it actually works? Because I think you might have got a few people's attention there.
Yeah. Up until really a few years ago, digital meant having a website, throwing some content onto that website, creating it in some tool, often Adobe, Microsoft products, etc., putting that content onto a website, paying Google a little bit of money to drive traffic to that website, and then you could either tell your story or conduct commerce. And then you started to take that URL and you put it into your social channels, and voila, you had a digital strategy. The trick to that is again, up until very recently, all you needed was access to the web, and you could do that through WordPress or Wix or Squarespace or GoDaddy or any number of hosting providers. And you didn't have to create for each particular one of those systems. Now, the web is just one of dozens of channels that you want to get your content made available to. And the exciting thing about that is it creates a much broader access and a much wider audience. You can be a small entrepreneur on the west coast of Australia, and you can reach a global audience now across a whole range of different channels and have a viable business in that way. The challenge is the channels that you want your content to be available on, in many cases, demand that you create natively for each of them. You have to create a set of stories and a set of content for Instagram. And then you have to do it again for Pinterest. And you have to start from scratch again for LinkedIn. And you have to start from scratch again, on and on and on and on, every single one. And there's no business in the world, from the largest to the smallest. The biggest companies in the world don't have the time, resources, or even expertise to get their content onto all those channels in front of their audience. And each of those channels, of course, would like you just to work within their own channel. But as a marketer, my audience doesn't only exist on Instagram. It doesn't only exist on Pinterest or Twitter. It exists across the digital landscape, and so it can be really overwhelming. So what Issuu does is it enables you to take your content that you've created, your corporate brochure, your content marketing materials, your catalogs, all of that content. You can create it once, upload that digital file into the Issuu system, and then we give you the tools, in many cases automated, to transform that content into the right set of assets that you want to be able to distribute to those channels. So you can take your catalog, you can turn it into a Pinterest pin, a story pin. You can turn it into a mobile optimized, panel oriented story to be shared on Instagram. You could have a full-on paginated video and link enhanced version of your catalog that you embed on your website. You can turn it into a GIF to distribute into your MailChimp email. So all of a sudden, with one document, one piece of content, you now have access to all the different channels that you want that content to be made available to, without having to create natively and without having to do much additional work to make it look great in each one of those different experiences.
So who is it typically that uses Issuu? And I'm not sure if you can name any of your customers, but how many do you have, and who are your typical kind of customers that people might recognize?
So we have millions of customers all over the world, from the biggest companies in the world like Shell and Patagonia to small individual entrepreneurs who are selling products, from coffee shops to restaurants and big businesses. Folks like Stella and Dot, who is sells individual folks can sell jewelry from their catalogs, to schools, to the NAACP that's been using us extensively now for fundraising and content distribution. We've seen individuals in the Black Lives Matter movement use the system to both communicate, create event materials, as well as publications. The Miami Dolphins football team, speaking of football, we had the Super Bowl yesterday. Miami Dolphins weren't in it, but Miami Dolphins use us for their digital playbooks and internal materials that they're using to pass around to players now, who can access that content on laptops and their phones. Folks like Etsy, which uses us for enabling their sellers to be able to create digital experiences and events that they otherwise used to be able to do in person. So a whole range of companies, businesses, and marketers using us, real estate companies, etc.
Oh man, when you mentioned the Miami Dolphins there, it took me back to the Dan Marino days. I used to be cheering them on back in the day.
Indeed, he was a great one. He was a great one.
It really was. And just to try and bring to life what we're talking about here, let's say I'm an Etsy maker and I sell things on there. How would I benefit using Issuu? And are there any special tools that Etsy makers that I'd be able to have as an Etsy maker that would help me market my goods as well?
Yeah, Etsy actually provides a lot of services to their makers, and one of the things that they do is they enable makers in particular locations to be able to sell their goods and products together. They used to take folks to farmers markets or various live shows or events to be able to sell those products. And of course, with COVID over the last year, those sorts of things have been unavailable. And so they've actually created these Etsy virtual marketplaces where, again, a handful of sellers have come together to sell their products jointly. And we help facilitate that whole process. They essentially created these virtual digital online marketplaces, and we provided templates so that they could create their digital catalogs. Those catalogs then have links to be able to go purchase the products or videos that show and highlight the products or the maker or the creative process. And now they have a full-on digital catalog that they can make available as part of the Etsy virtual trade show, or they can embed that on their own website, or they can take pages from that and turn it into a story that they can then distribute through Instagram, or they can embed that in a MailChimp or a Constant Contact email campaign. So we've provided the templates for them to create, and then they can drop in their assets and their information, and they now have an entire system that enables them to reach audiences that actually even go beyond what they had been reaching with those sort of in-person events that they used to do. And we think that this is going to be an ongoing trend. Beyond COVID, I think we're going to start to see a lot of the digitalization of in-person sales, of in-person marketing that digitalization process is going to continue.
And if we do have any marketers listening, would they use Issuu alongside other marketing tools or instead of? How would they get the most out of it?
Typically, it's alongside. We have what we call the Issuu Story Cloud, and the Issuu Story Cloud provides access to our customers to the right tools and services that they need. But more importantly, it enables us to start to do the integrations with other technology providers and other tools that they're already using. One of the things that I find really frustrating and almost disturbing about the technology world is so many technology companies create a great product, and then we have the arrogance to expect our customers to go figure out how to use us with somebody else. And I think there's going to be an increasing effort around working together so that the technology companies and the tools can start to provide much more of a clear solution to our customers. So we've gone ahead and done that with the Issuu Story Cloud. We've integrated with a number of players, either very specifically or in a way that it's easy to use us together. So, for instance, many of our customers will create their content, their catalog, their brochure, their document. They'll create it in using Adobe Creative Cloud products or Canva or any number of others, but often those two. That helps them do the creation. They can also use our templates that we provide. Then you can upload that content into Issuu, or many of them will upload that content into a storage system, Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive or whatever it happens to be. And then again, you can pull that content into Issuu from wherever it's been stored, run it, turn it into the right set of assets on Issuu, and then distribute it often through one click to whatever canvas you want that content to be on, or to, again, a MailChimp, so you can integrate it with a campaign, so that we give you the full flow from integrating with the creation tool that you're using, to the storage provider that you're using, to the canvas that you want that content to go to. And then you also we're also working on integrations with the big MarTech players. So scheduling purposes for Hootsuite and folks like HubSpot and various others. So we see ourselves really sitting right in the center of the creative tools, storage systems, the MarTech stack, and the canvases to where that content wants to go. And we help you turn your content, transform it into those right set of assets, and then distribute it either to or through whatever system matters most to you. So our focus really is facilitating efficiency for creators and marketers so that they can reach the widest audience possible in the easiest way possible as well. And we think it's incumbent upon us to integrate and work very closely with all the different players in and around this space.
And before we started recording this podcast today, you and I were talking and reminiscing on how much our life has changed over the last 12 months. And the same will be for everybody listening as well. But I'm curious, has demand increased since the pandemic? And have you noticed any changes in the way Issuu is being used since the pandemic started?
Yeah, we've seen a huge increase in demand. And it's certainly a trend that had started before the pandemic. I think in the last, as I mentioned earlier, this digital transformation has been such that we're going from over-reliance on the web to this whole new set of channels that you want content to be going to, some of which we know. So no one had heard of TikTok 3 or 4 years ago, and there are plenty of others that are being developed now. So the trend of digital transformation has certainly been an ongoing one, very much accelerated by COVID, and I think the length of of the pandemic has just sort of reinforced ways in which people are operating now. In terms of, we're seeing a whole set of new kinds of applications. So restaurants are using us extensively to get their menus digitally available and shared and put into the right set of formats. Up until a year ago, restaurants would put their menu up often on a web page and you go check it out before you went to sit down. Now it's become a competitive advantage to have the most efficient distribution, access, and engagement with your menu. Real estate companies are using us extensively. Used to be real estate agents, or the bread and butter of the real estate market was you'd get a brochure, but you'd go visit the place and really see it. And now they've got to start creating brochures and documents and information that create a much richer experience for potential buyers. We're seeing folks like one of our customers is Miri's List, which is a charitable organization helping refugees, and they're using us to really drive their fundraisers in ways that they hadn't done before. Conferences are a huge new category where they're going digital, and the opportunity for exhibitors or sponsors to be able to get their marketing materials distributed to that new audience that's consuming content digitally is an area that we're seeing significant growth in. Schools and learning, citizen-related activities. We saw a lot over the summer here in the U.S. of Black Lives Matter content created and distributed to provide additional information and content. So, I think one of the areas that we're seeing the biggest growth in is anything that used to rely on in-person sales or in-person interaction is now moving into a digital format and using the Issuu system to create the right set of assets and make sure that they get distributed efficiently to the right audience.
And is there anything else that you're expecting to take shape in 2021, or any other big trends on the horizon that you're watching closely?
So I think this whole idea of that we talked about earlier of the digital MarTech integration is going to be one that dominates the landscape in 2021 and beyond. Is the need that businesses are going to demand. There's so many tools now available to them which enable them to run their businesses really efficiently, from payment systems to creation tools to distribution to channels they can get that content on. But there's more and more and more of it. And so I think we're going to start to see solutions come together that individual companies start to provide those solutions with other individual companies, so that customers can be more efficient and take more advantage of the solution. We're going to see a lot of that. In some cases, we'll see it through acquisition, like we saw with Salesforce and Slack. In other cases, we'll see it through API integrations and joint solutions that people are co-marketing together. I think we're going to see this notion of social, leveraging social networks and social platforms much more effectively for business purposes. We've seen the infancy of that with groups or different marketing capabilities or commerce capabilities on Instagram or things like that. But I think we're going to start to see a lot more sophistication around social channels facilitating commerce and facilitating business in ways that we hadn't necessarily seen before. The third one that I would highlight is we're going to see a massive growth on first-time digitalpreneurs, if you will, where we're going to start to see people who, out of necessity or out of interest or out of being home, are starting to realize that they can actually start to create new businesses. So I think if we think about sort of the Phoenix-like system that we would all love to see come out of this pandemic, I think the Phoenix is going to manifest in individual first-time businesses and creators who are going to leverage access to really sophisticated but now easy to get creativity tools, systems to transform that content into the range of assets that you need, and leveraging social and in ways that we haven't seen before. And we're going to see people build these huge businesses that in the past would have taken dozens or hundreds of people to run, will now start to be run much more efficiently and with fewer people.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast and sharing these stories with me today and your experiences and insights that you're seeing. But for anyone listening that wants to carry on this conversation or dive a little bit deeper on any of the topics that we've talked about, what's the best way of finding Issuu online and also contacting your team if anybody listening would like to ask a question?
Yeah, you can find us at issuu.com, issuu.com. Anybody can find me directly. If you're interested, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm at Yankee Joe, YANKEEJOE. And always happy to dig into these topics and ideas further. There's lots that we can keep learning from each other and talking through.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I record this podcast every day, so we can continue to learn from each other. And just spending 30 minutes with you today and learning how small businesses are dramatically changing, whether it be real estate brochures, property flyers, menus, QR codes. There's just so many big changes that we've probably not even realised have taken place in the last 12 months. It's not until you look back that you see just how much has changed. So a big thank you for taking the time to come on and share that with me today.
Absolutely. You're welcome. It's my pleasure, and hope we can do it again.
The ability to create it once and distribute it everywhere has huge appeal for me, as I don't have time to resize images and content to make it suitable for that ever-growing list of platforms. So I will be looking into how Issuu can help me. But I found it fascinating to hear that once that pandemic hit, Issuu started to see a flood of menus being posted as restaurants scrambled to respond to online ordering and takeout needs. And some even posted QR codes of Issuu formatted menus in storefront windows so patrons could view the menu and order food over the phone from the safety of their cars. But I also loved hearing the influx of real estate brochures, property flyers and market reports from realtors, all due to the restrictions on in-person showings and office walkings. And as a result, the entire retail industry began leveraging technology to adjust their sales process accordingly. But I'm curious, does anything in today's conversation make you think about your processes differently? Is your industry or workplace adopting technology to solve these new problems and challenges and overcome obstacles that have suddenly appeared? It's you and your story that I want to get on this podcast. That's why it works so well, I think, that we can have a different story every day and we can all learn from each other. So please email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You can find all my social channels on there too, along with 1,500 podcast interviews. And boy, are there a few lessons for us all to learn from in some of those. So a big thank you as always for listening. Hope you'll join me again tomorrow. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.